All right, welcome to Broadfield Distributing Liquid Lunch. You may be thinking that Jim put on some weight. That's not the case. This is Gary Ptz, the president of Broadfield, and I'm going to be doing today's Liquid Lunch. And we're going with a special new format. We want to bring Glenn on the show, and Glenn's on the show. If you can see him over there, Glenn's coming in from freezing cold Texas. I guess hell has froze over, right?
Yes, it has.
Including
It's
your
getting warmer
saltwater
finally.
pond. Including your saltwater pond, right? Your saltwater pool?
Correct.
All right,
My
so
saltwater pool looks more like a Arctic lake right now.
the show's going to go on. Jim will be back next week. I'm going to do the show. On this show, we wanted to do a format. We've been getting a lot of calls from dealers asking about local churches and house of worship, and they want to get started and want to expand their system. But before we do that, this is called a liquid lunch. So let's get some liquid going. Now, I know Jim likes to do beer, but I'm a bourbon guy. So we're going to do this show right with a little Michter's Rye. Glenn, what are you drinking down there?
I am drinking some Monkey Shoulder Scotch whiskey. So
Monkey Shoulder, nice. Cheers.
cheers.
That's good. All right, so basically what's happened is I've been getting a lot of calls put through me, and Glenn's been getting calls put through him through the reps of people with a local church looking to get started or looking to expand their live streaming. They want to do some remote stuff. They've limited people that can get in the church, or they've just realized that other churches in their area are streaming. And we get calls about, how do I do this? What's the best thing to recommend to the church? So we're going to kind of walk you through not just the sales pitch to the local church who calls you looking for this stuff, but more also some of the tech questions that we run into all the time. And one of the first things I almost every time we run into is that the aspirations don't necessarily match the budget or even the technology capabilities of the church. So let's talk about 4K versus HD. And this is where a lot of things they say, we want 4K, we want to do 4K. And Glenn, the first thing I always tell the dealers is, do they understand the bandwidth they need, the upstream bandwidth to support 4K? Because while HD will work great with 50, I don't want anyone touching 4K with less than 100 up. And almost no one has 100 up unless they specifically bought a package that gives them that level of upgrade. It's all about the download speed typically when you get from your cable or your phone company, correct?
Yeah, no, and it's once you start talking 4K, the price kind of starts to obviously it trickles up. All the hardware around it trickles up. So there's that aspect, and then the biggest thing is, first off, does it increase your viewership? Does it add any value? And then, as you said, network speeds. We're dealing with people with having tons of just problems streaming just HD, let alone trying to do a consistent 4K stream.
Yeah, plus, on Sunday, churches stream. So you tend to run to some bandwidth hiccups anyway. So by trying to pump 4K up and out, you're using more bandwidth than your audience really needs. Because the truth of the matter is the best advice I give for you as a dealer to give to your house of worship is invest in creating the most engaging content, not the highest quality resolution. That's not where the fight is. The fight is to get the best workflow and the best content. So over the course of today's show, we're going to be talking about a lot of different products that we sell, that you sell, that you can offer your house of worship at very different levels of budgets here. But we wanted to make sure we went over that first thing, which is 4K aspirational, HD reality. And just if you have a house of worship asking about 4K, the first thing you should say is, are you replacing an HD system you don't like? And if their answer isn't that, no one should be starting with 4K out of the bat. That doesn't mean you can't get them in gear that's 4K compatible down the road. So you can get if they have the budget for a camera that's 4K, by all means, that's where you're going. But don't build your whole system around 4K, because the only time 4K works is when everything is 4K. That means 4K cameras, 4K mixers, 4K encoders, and 4K glass everywhere. So make your expectations match.
Yeah, I would say on that, because we're going to talk about it a little bit later on when we get into some of the camera technology. Starting with 4K glass is great. We're going to talk 4K. Doesn't necessarily mean you 4K stream. There's great benefits to acquiring on 4K, shooting in 4K, archiving in 4K. There's technology that allow you to create a 1080 out of a 4K. But 4K streaming is a whole other beast, and 4K switching is a whole other beast.
And the key word is beast. Beast means more cost, more technology, more. And Why start slaying that beast? The next thing I want to switch to is something that's not beastly at all, but is actually the opposite, and that's NDI versus HDMI and SDI. And HDMI, SDI, that's your old analog, your old way, your baseband way of connecting stuff. NDI is what, we're pushing, you're pushing that to deals. That's the technology that New Tech introduced. But for a house of worship, I find NDI is a great discussion to have because most of them have multiple network jacks throughout their facility, and they tend to have a pretty good, not great, but a pretty good switch in there, behind everything. So, you may need to give them some recommendations on switches, correct, Glenn? But their wiring should be capable of NDI.
Yeah, they're wiring. I mean, HDMI is great. HDSDI is great. If they're already wired, it's great. But HDMI, NDI fits into a lot of places. If it's a new church, why not start with technology that's going to bring them much more into the future? NDI is the way to go. We'll talk about how you can create overflow rooms and things like that. The other thing I've seen a ton of with NDI in churches is a lot of these churches that are either historic, they're older buildings. You can't run power, SDI, Ethernet. You can't run all those cables in an older church. Make a very small hole, run a Cat6 cable. You've got power, control, video all over one cable. Very easy to get into an existing infrastructure.
I think I also want to talk about NDI is that NDI can come across as a mystery when you're talking to your house of worship. So I want everyone to remember that Glenn's here to backstop you. If you need to get on a call with the pastor or with the person who's in charge of the money at the house of worship to explain what NDI is, we can three-way call that with you and your house of worship to let them understand that we're putting them into a technology that is really future-proof. And that's the main thing I like about NDI. They may have talked about 4K and other stuff. Well, NDI makes doing 4K so much easier because the NDI pipe can handle standard def or 4K. It doesn't care. You hear me, Glenn?
I can hear you.
Cool.
Sorry. No, I completely agree. I mean, it's, either you're going to run 12G SDI cables right now to future-proof, or you run a Cat6 cable that'll do both in the future. And again, I think the big thing that I've seen, we've made this comment before about NDI for social distancing. It's so easy with NDI. Just say, hey, great, we want the sermon now being sent to the children's room or sent to the foyer. Being able to reroute that is all very, very slick. And of course, if anybody doesn't understand NDI, or somebody wants, again, to talk to somebody about NDI's pros and cons, ping me.
Cool. And we're going to get to NDI a lot at the end of the show where we finish up as we ratchet up the technology and go, each level higher. But one of the things that we've gotten access to over the last few months are two really great low-cost basic mixers. So I really wanted to show those. Now, if you're one of our customers, you've heard about the Roland V1 HD. That's a great little inexpensive, $1,000 mixer, but all it does is video mixing. It doesn't do audio and it doesn't do streaming. Well, we've got some products that do a little bit more, and that's the YOLO box, which is an Android device that does mixing, switching, encoding, and recording. And the RGB Link, which is a 4-channel HDMI mixer, which also has USB output that will send to any laptop looking like a webcam so that you can stream directly to Facebook or to YouTube, or you could go into something like an OBS or another software package. It's up to you. So Glenn, talk about these low-cost mixers, because I think everyone thinks they need like a $10,000 budget, and that's just not true anymore.
Yeah. So when we talk churches, the thing I always look at too is it's who is your operator? Who is it? I know churches where there's a 70-year-old guy that is the usher that makes sure everybody gets to his seat, and then when he's all done, he's the guy that's got to do the switching and the streaming. So a lot of it is it comes down to ease of use, ease of streaming, camera support, things like that. I classify a lot of these as just, hey, these are the walk up. You can teach somebody these very quickly, very easily. The YOLO is extremely nice and easy. I mean, it's an iPad. So for that guy that 70-year-old usher, he can just look at the pictures, click on it, set it up, and switch cameras, and it's streaming. It's all in one. It's one device, really nice. The RGB Link is a great little device. I almost say that's a utility device that everybody should just have anyways, because what if you just need to bring in one more camera? Plug that in, switch cameras with that. Again, very easy 4-button interface. The Rolands are great for that. I have seen a lot of churches where it's now, when COVID hit and they had to suddenly start streaming, it became the audio guy's job to figure that out. And Roland is just a great transition from an audio guy that's used to an audio mixing console to step into a video mixer or a video switcher. Some of those have touchscreen interfaces, so they're all over the place on what you want to do, and from SD all the way up to 4K in some cases.
Yeah, now some churches already have multi-camera mixing in their place, so they just want to add a camera and get out there. And that's where encoders come in. One of my favorite little encoders is the Matrox Monarch, a little $9.99 encoder. What I really love about the Monarch is the Monarch lets you encode to go up to, let's say, Facebook or YouTube, but it also allows the church to get a high resolution recording, either an SD card or a USB attached storage, so that they can then edit for post-production from the original high quality content that they had. But we've got a bunch of other encoders too that are out there, don't we, Glenn?
Yeah, and that's the thing we got to talk about too is, we saw a lot of this early on in the pandemic where churches just needed to stream. So, we'll talk about this when we get to the cameras, but some of the cameras out there have built-in streaming. So if you just need to get one camera out there, one stream out there, you can encode right off of the cameras. The next step that I've seen is things like the Epiphan AVIOs, which is a USB device. Grab a camcorder, plug that in over HDMI, that becomes a webcam, you can stream that way. Yeah, those are the single point solutions. Then you can get into things like we've got, the VDU series. So VDUX is a product that's just coming out. This is going to do Facebook, YouTube Live. It's a simple little, purpose-built device. You plug your HDMI into it, and it just streams. If you sign up for the ShoreLink service through Teradek, you can also then stream to multiple destinations. It also has the ability to do bonding. So if you don't have a great Wi-Fi signal, you can bond Wi-Fi and cellular, and that's all capable. There's the VDUX, which will go a little bit high. I'm sorry, the VDU Go, which is HEVC. So that's the next thing, is just where you want to go compression-wise. There's the Monarch that you've talked about, a couple different flavors of the Monarch that does recording as well.
And there's the LiveView Solo, and the whole LiveView product.
That's where I was going to get to next. Is the next step from there is LiveView Solo, which, and I see this all the time. A lot of these churches, we were talking about bandwidth. A lot of these churches don't even have that bandwidth, or they can't rely on that bandwidth. Last thing you want to do is, start streaming your sermon, and then suddenly realize somebody's downloading something from the internet to print something, and your network bandwidth goes down.
Oy.
So with LiveView, so you can either use, the encoder only model, which will just encode and stream, and it'll use your internet connection, or you can go with the LiveView Solo with the Connect kit that's going to use cellular data. And here's the thing, an unlimited data plan for the two modems in that is $295 a month. That's nothing to ensure that every single sermon, every single, every Sunday you're getting your stream out.
Right, it's about $60 a Sunday to be able to do that. And the other thing that's cool about the LiveView Solo is it also means you can bring it with you. So if you're one of those houses of worship that's out in the field and does some ministries, in the local area, or maybe you go visit a local hospital or a nursing home or whatever, you can bring that with you to stream from there as well. So the encoder is a very important part of the whole puzzle, and we've got a wide range of encoders. And a new encoder we have that I think is really going to be good in house of worship is the new Clearcaster Micro, which is, we use the Clearcaster here, and what's great about that is they work very closely on the SDK level with people like Facebook and stuff like that, so you really get a super reliable stream. And what I love about their stream to Facebook is if you accidentally stop the stream, it keeps going, so you don't lose where you were. And if anyone's ever tried to watch a stream on Facebook, if it kicks out, getting back to that stream again, even though you want to find it, can be very difficult. You don't have to worry about that with the Clearcaster.
Yeah, and I think when you step into the Clearcaster, I mean, the whole benefit with that too, which people have to think about, is the Clearcaster, that includes their cloud orchestration layer, and that's the beauty. Which also means that it can be set up in the church. If the person in the church doesn't really know how to run it or messed up a setting, anybody can get on it. They can get to it and queue it from the web, from a web browser. They can set it up. I think that becomes the thing too. As you move up this tier, it kind of becomes, okay, are you streaming to one destination? Is it just Facebook? Is it YouTube? Is that it? Or are you looking to stream to multiple destinations? The higher up you go in that, the more, higher end products you're going to look at, the more services you're going to look at. The other thing I want to talk about too was, funny thing you mentioned the live view. I want to just jump back to that because I know this is happening in Texas. We've got a couple churches that, because it got so cold, they have pipes that are frozen and they're shut down. So now these churches are looking for a new temporary location. Well, now they can just take that live view solo and go and stream. Another product that's coming out that I'm really excited is the Pearl Nano.
Yes.
That is another purpose-built piece of hardware designed to stream to Facebook, YouTube Live. One of the things I like about it is it's got a little built-in confidence monitor, so you can actually see that video is going into the thing. You can do some basic compositing with it, so you can throw a graphic on top of there. You can do a picture-in-picture, so it allows you to get a little bit kind of fancier with your stream as well. It also records, and again, another thing that can be administered from a website. So if somebody calls and says, "Hey, my stream's down," somebody can jump on and look at it that doesn't have to be in, near the unit.
And Glenn, because we're focusing on House of Worship, I want to mention also that our encoders can go to Facebook or YouTube or any RTMP stream. So there's a lot of worship-related CDNs who are curating that for you. And all the products we're talking about today can go to those CDNs through RTMP. We say Facebook and YouTube is like generic that everyone understands, but we also understand that houses of worship don't necessarily want to be on those broad-based channels. They want to make sure that they aren't getting, the constituents aren't getting hit with weird ads or stuff that's not right, coming up. So we get that. I want to switch gears now and I want to talk about cameras. And to start with cameras, I want to talk about this puppy from Panasonic. This is the Panasonic CX-10, and I think this is the best run and gun, good old-fashioned camcorder for streaming in the world. Now, not only does this camcorder shoot great video and look great, but it's got XLR inputs and it's got IP NDI streaming technology built into it. It's really amazing. Glenn, you've had some fun with these Panasonic cameras, haven't you?
Yeah, they're great. I mean, it's Panasonic, great name. That one's nice. It's a nice small form factor. So either you can run it and gun it, or you can put it on a tripod somewhere out of sight. It's not really super noticeable. And again, that's a case where, with that one, the 10, there's a little USB dongle that you plug in that'll get you your NDI out, or that's one of those cameras too that'll output that that web stream, so that RTMP stream that you can just go and send right to any streaming service or Facebook. So it's a camera you can stream right out of the back of without any extra setup either.
And then what I'm looking at over here is the CX350. That's the big brother, and that's a real full-size, camcorder. But the family is still two great features, camcorders that allow you to shoot in 4K in the future, but for now you can stream in IP. But I want to switch gears now, and if we can, I think we have a camera slide pull, right? I want to talk about Ptz cameras. Now, we've got a bunch of Ptz cameras here. We have 4 companies that we get Ptz cameras from for you guys. We have Ptz Optics, we have Bird Dog, we have NewTek, and we have Panasonic. And Glenn, I like to try to position where these fit so people understand, when they're pitching to their customers where it is. And I want to start with Ptz Optics because they're the most affordable brand out there. And they have cameras in 12x, 20x, 30x. And what I really like about that is if you've got a church that wants to start right from the beginning with 2 or 3 cameras, that's where this affordability is really going to come in for them. On the high end where we have Panasonic, yeah, that's probably for your bigger churches or your houses of worship that maybe already have some stuff going on. They want to improve it and take it to the next level. And then in the middle, we have the NewTek camera and we have Bird Dog. What I really love about the Bird Dog guys is how their NDI is integrated on a firmware level, and they really do a better job with that than anyone else. But when it comes to Ptz cameras, talk about, for a house of worship, what thoughts, what are the right questions a dealer should be asking their house of worship when they're trying to figure out which Ptz cameras are best for them?
Yeah, so I always pitch Ptz Optics as my first professional Ptz camera. When you're tired of the cheap ones that you're buying, Ptz Optics is great. Most people go there because of the cost. I think Ptz Optics has a great suite of tools. I mean, being able to control the camera from an iPad app is great. Web streaming out of the back of the camera. The question, obviously becomes, lighting. Ptz cameras are great. Bird Dog and Panasonic have better low light situations in both of those cameras. In general, you're going to look at the distance, the throw distance, or the distance from the camera to your subject, and then IMAG. IMAG is a big question. So if we're talking just regular HDMI, HDSDI, iMag isn't an issue. If you start talking NDI, you've got to start thinking about, whether it's NDI or NDI-HX. NDI-HX is great. It's come a long way, but NDI-HX is not always ideal for doing iMag as opposed to the bird dog cameras, which are full NDI. NDI-HX just introduces a little bit of extra latency. But really, it comes down to a lot of it's just it's the price, it's the quality. Bird dog are great cameras, but the new tech, the Panasonic, and the bird dogs all have higher end sensors. But again, it's the higher end price point that you're getting into in that product as well.
And then one of the areas I think is great for a house of worship getting started, your first camera, is look into an EPTZ camera. An EPTZ camera is basically a 4K camera that you mount stationary somewhere in the room, but then through its own software or third-party software or your mixer, you can take out HD slices of that video. So if you had an HD camera that had your whole house of worship set up, and maybe you have 2 pulpits and the choir, you could have it the wide shot, but you could also, from that EPTZ, you could have the choir shot, have, cleric 1, have the priest over here. You can get it all in there, and it looks like a multi-camera shot. And what I really love about EPTZ is since the cameras don't move, you could do it with like a cutting. So it's seamlessly cutting from shot to shot. And we have 2 different EPTZ cameras. We have the UE4 from Panasonic, and we have the EPTZ Pro from Ptz Optics. And they're both really great first cameras, and at under $1,000, you can't beat that for getting started.
Yeah, I like the Ptz Optics one is great. The cool thing with that is, you've got 2 HDSDIs coming out of the camera. One is basically your cropped 4K down to a 1080 that you can, zoom into anywhere you want, reposition it. The other one is the entire 4K view as a single 1080. So like Gary was saying, you essentially have 2 cameras. You have a close-up camera and you have a wide shot camera that you can switch between seamlessly. The motion on these is all electronic. So you've also got, if you just want to actually have the camera move a little bit, you've got a nice smooth motion. But really the whole neat thing about it is you can suddenly just with one camera look like you're doing a 2-camera shoot.
Now, I'm good at standing in place and talking, and you're good at standing in place and talking, but we all know some of the best preachers are not standing in place. They're all over the place. They're up on the stage. They're coming down into the crowd. And that's where auto tracking can just bring your show to the next level. And auto tracking, there's a couple of different options. It's basically where you have a Ptz camera that either picks facial identity or the other AI type technology that lets you track. And we have auto tracking from Ptz with their auto tracking, and then all of the Panasonic, well, almost all of the Panasonic cameras, you can download the auto tracking firmware and upgrade them for auto tracking, which is super cool. And you can even do that for like a 30-day free trial if you want to test it and try it. So I really think auto tracking is a fantastic thing to pitch to your house of worship, especially if you're doubling back. And this is what I want to talk about a little bit is, last year in 2020, this epidemic hit, and these houses of worship just had to figure out a way to stream. And a lot of them got an encoder or got a single Ptz camera. Well, Mr. Dealer, go back to those customers. In 2020, they made it work. In 2021, show them how they can make it that much better by either upgrading the camera to a better camera, perhaps adding auto tracking, or maybe adding another camera, 2 other cameras, and a low cost or more professional mixer. But those guys, everyone you sold a Ptz camera into 2020 is a great customer for you to be reaching out now and talking about the products from this webinar, because they all, in 2020, they made it work. They got their stream out there. They were able to stay, but their eyes have opened up. And I think one of the biggest things we've heard back from our customers and from houses of worship in general is that while they used to see streaming as the enemy of getting people in the seats, they now understand that with people getting to experience and see how it is, we all still want to be back at our house of worship and talking to our friends and chatting. But we all know we can't get there every week. But we could certainly watch the stream more often too. So I think by doing an approach where we've got people back at the house of worship and we're streaming, we're actually going to increase our message. We're going to increase the amount of people who are actively participating in our services. And more than that, I think you're going to see the donations go up as you reach more people too, because that's part of the benefit of having this wider reach, where people don't have to show up on a Sunday to get the message and to be a part of the flock, so to speak.
Yeah. No, and I think it's sweet, but if somebody's got one camera, I mean, for the price of another camera and an RGB link, they now have doubled their production capability. And I think that the thing that's neat is, during the pandemic, a lot of these churches already had money or they did fundraisers to get a camera in there. And they were instantly able to see streaming. Well, now for just a little bit more, they can add a second camera and a switcher or a mixer and suddenly just up their production value. And it's the quickest return on a fundraiser that a church can see.
Cool. What's our next category, Adam? Software mixers. Now, software mixers, Glenn, I didn't want to spend a lot of time on this, but I know, going back old school when we were selling mainly NLE stuff, there's always some dealers who say, I don't want to buy someone else's box. I love computers. I'm going to put together my own white box. I'm going to throw some software on it. And that software could be vMix, it could be OBS, it could be Wirecast. And, we sell Wirecast, especially if your customer wants a Mac-based solution. Wirecast is great. But why I wanted to bring that up in the show, number one, is that you really are owning the service and support if you do something like that. So if you decide you're going to white box, understand you're kind of committing to give up some of your Sundays because it's your box and you got to be there if something goes wrong. Now, if you're selling a white box to your church and you're there on Sunday, it's great. You walk in the back, you help. But what if it's to the church that's 2 hours away on the other side of town? The other thing that I wanted to stress is that's great. You still need to get them more Ptz cameras and more other goodies that you have in here that you could sell. So getting them, if you put someone in a white box running vMix or a white box running OBS or what have you, it's a great time now, once again, to go back to them and say, how do we make it better? What can we add?
Yeah. So, I laugh. I see OBS all the time and I make the same comment, and 90% of the time it's true. When I talk to churches that have OBS, most of the time the call is because what I find out is the person that was operating the OBS is no longer with the church. Usually it was some kid that was with part of the church youth choir or something that was a gamer and got an OBS system in there, and now they've moved off to college and there's nobody that knows how to operate it. The cool thing is, if you built a great system, the next step really is, okay, let's step it up. Let's go to a vMix. vMix is at least a step up from OBS. Even further, let's go to a Wirecast software. Wirecast software does streaming. It does all those things. If you've built a system that can handle those, transitioning to Wirecast software is great. And then, from there, if they want even more, then, which is our next segue, is they can go all the way to a full-blown hardware system where you can go with a Wirecast gear or something like that.
So before we get into the advanced systems, I want to call a little time out for those of us selling into worship, because you mentioned it immediately. And everything we've gone over so far can be run by a volunteer very easily. That if there's one person who knows how it works, they can teach someone else how to make it work an hour before you have to go live for the service. The next products we're going into, these advanced systems, really means someone in your house of worship has to be dedicated to doing this. And I want to caution you on what Glenn said. A techie 17-year-old who's going off to college the next year isn't the right guy to base your whole technology streaming budget on the house of worship. If you have like a couple of members of your parish who are actively into this, who could be trained, if there's someone, one of the teachers in your Sunday schools into it, that's a little bit different. But these next products definitely give you a whole nother level of production. Look what we're doing on today's show, which is coming out of you from a TriCast. I mean, this is cool with all these graphics and all the stuff that's going on, the picture-in-picture. I'm on a virtual set. I mean, this is wonderful, but we've got some trained guys doing it. So we're going to go into the advanced mixers now, but I want to caution everyone that as a dealer, you got to make sure they have the budget, and you have to make sure they have the actual people there who could do it. Or if you're the kind of dealer who wants to see a profit opportunity, you could sell them the system and say, come Sundays, I have a guy who'll come and run the shows and train your people. And that's a great opportunity for you as a profit opportunity. But I don't want to see someone sell a TriCaster into a house of worship and then have them hate the TriCaster and hate you because they didn't understand that it takes some effort and a learning curve on those products. But the three advanced mixer products we want to focus on is the Pearl 2 and the Pearl Mini, which I'll say is that they're the kind of set it and forget it advanced mix products, which don't have the feature set of the others, but are volunteer friendly. Or going up to, the Wirecast gear, which is a dedicated computer to run Wirecast, or the new tech TriCasters, of which there's different levels of TriCast. There's a TriCaster Mini, Ndi, which is a great product to get started on, or there's the full TC1, for your house of worship. And we definitely have a lot of houses of worship who are using TC1s, and we run our show that you're watching now on a TC1, as you guys know. But it's not for everyone, but for your churches that have the budget and the people, boy, oh boy, is this it's really a great sale, because they are going to be able to put something out to their congregation that's just going to be so much better than what everyone else is watching. In fact, I will say that in an epidemic world, with a TriCaster, you can put something out locally that's as good as anything you're watching on, you know, the networks right now with remote guests and the way they're doing things.
Yeah, no, for sure. So on the Epiphan, and you made a great point, and I kind of, you know, whenever I'm doing these pitches to church, I kind of start with who's the operator. So, you know, the Wirecast, as far as being a software hardware combination, that's great. I always explain that to people. Oh, I'm going there. You know, the thing I like about the Wirecast is if you can build a PowerPoint presentation, you can do it. And there's lots of opportunities for even dealers to go in with these churches and sell them the system, build a template, build a layout, and then come back later on and say, hey, let's revive that. So Wirecast is great. It's a great gateway. The Epifans, those are phenomenal. The thing I like about the Epifan is, you know, yes, you held it up. It's a touch screen. You can see it. But the Epifan can be driven off of an iPad. And I see that a lot in churches where, great, the hardware's over there. That's where all the video feeds are getting. There's somebody sitting, you know, in the pews, you know, switching the show on an iPad. And that level of simplicity makes the Epifan a really powerful product because it's an all-in-one, and it does the switching, it does the streaming, does the graphics, does the recording. Driven off of an iPad is great. And then you start going up the chain for the more complex products.
And Glenn, one of the things I want to stress with these advanced mixers is they have multiple inputs and keying capabilities. So bringing in lyrics from Pro Presenter or other software is just so easy. And I know that's probably one of the #1 reasons why a house of worship will step up to one of these advanced mixers is they want to bring the feed in from Pro Presenter. They want to bring those lyrics in. They want to have, you know, that level of help within the place. And they also want to bring those lyrics up on. Oftentimes, you know, they want to not only stream, but they maybe bring video out to an overflow room, or perhaps they want to send it to a different classroom in the place, or just the way the church is set up, it's big enough that they like to have some TVs on the side towards the back, so for people to be able to see a little bit better. And getting those lyrics and getting stuff up there, really, the congregation definitely appreciates that little added notch of production quality.
Yep, for sure.
Next, I want to go to NDI. And NDI, I think we have a separate pull screen. And we ran over late on this show, Glenn, but I knew it was going to happen because, #1, I never shut up. And #2, we like talking about this stuff. But what I'm really hoping is that we're really giving a overview on how to sell into house of worship for our dealers. And I think no matter what level dealer you are, whether you're a single operator or a big local store, local camera store, or maybe you're a integration specialist or what have you, you could take advantage of these products. And all of you also have what I'm going to call some bigger houses of worship in your area who maybe had solutions they were using that under the world of COVID and having to stream where they threw an encoder up, they realized, you know what, we're doing this, but we're just not doing it right. How do we make it better? And the #1 way to make things work better in a house of worship, I feel, is by going to NDI. And one of the first things you're going to have to do when you get your house of worship into NDI is you're probably going to have to upgrade their switch, correct?
Yeah, I mean, you know, most of them, if they even have a switch, I mean, depending on the size of the church, sometimes it's just great. We got the gateway from our cable company, and everybody's plugged into that. Everybody's connected wirelessly. That's it. So, you know, you're definitely going to look at upgrading a switch, upgrading the network infrastructure a little bit.
So with the switch, we're going to get a switch, and let's go over that. We're going to look for PoE, power over Ethernet, and we actually want like PoE plus, the higher level plus you can afford. You're going to want really, I think, 8 inputs because 4 you're going to quickly run into a bottleneck. And then the other thing that you're going to want is a switch that's got the ability for you to really drill down into it and customize it for wherever you are, because no matter where you are in the country, there's always something weird with your cable provider or something else where you need to set your firewall up a little bit different, your gateways and things like that. So once again, we have Glenn here. So Mr. Dealer, if you're not an IT specialist, don't worry. Glenn can help you figure out which switch is best for your church to get started, because once the switch is in, the NDI world opens up. So I want to talk about some of the NDI benefits you get. Let's say you want to put a couple of Ptz cameras in. Not only can I power them from the switch, not only will the video go from the camera back to the mixer, but all my Ptz camera control can be done via NDI because it's a two-way communication protocol. So video goes one way, control goes the other way, and you can even bring in things like comms and tally and stuff like that. So if you've got a house of worship where you can really open it up, and even if you got to run a couple of network jacks, it's easy to run cab 5 and cab 6. It's an easy cable. You can run any lanes you want. NDI just opens up a whole world of goodness and future proofing for a house of worship for if you're going to go with NDI.
Yeah, and I love the comment I made to Gary last week. I had some new equipment that I had to test in the house. I'm so used to NDI, I'm getting it all set up, and suddenly I realized, oh, wait a minute, I have to grab an HDMI cable, and I have to go to a whole other part of the house, find the HDMI cable. It's a mindset, but again, I always make the reference with NDI. If you can ping it, you can get video to it, and that's where NDI is really great. So if somebody suddenly says, hey, we've got to separate. We've got to put some more people in another room. There's a conference room down there. Great. Is there a network jack in there? Cool. Grab an NDI, an NDI converter, plug it in. You've now got, either cameras in there or you've got video going into that room.
Glenn, let's go a little further on that, because I love almost every house of worship has an overflow room. There's always certain times of the year where more people show up, which is a wonderful thing. You could take a device that has NDI decode, like the Bird Dog Flex, $399 product, hook that up to any HDMI TV, and now they will get the video and audio that you're showing in the main room. But because it's NDI, you could also give them something slightly different. If you just wanted to give them the camera from the back of the room, or maybe you want them to have the camera cuts without any graphics, it's up. You can control that based on what your mixer allows you to do. We use a Tricaster, so obviously it's built for NDI from the beginning and ground up. But the expandability of NDI is just dramatic. Also, kind of the remote ability with NDI. I don't have to have my mixer and switcher in the main sanctuary. I can have a separate room, a closet, a basement, a classroom, where I can have my mixing and my screen set up, and someone could be sitting there running the show. They don't have to be physically in the same room that the stream is coming from. For houses of worship who have limited capacities because of rules that are locally there, or maybe you just don't have like an area where you could give a 10 by 10 box into the main sanctuary. For them, it's a great way to go. So NDI is future-proof. It gives you expandability. And the best part about NDI, Glenn, is you're our workflow specialist. So when you're a Broadfield dealer and you're pitching NDI, you don't have to worry about having, and you're going to mix some stuff from Bird Talk, some stuff from NewTek, some stuff from Ptz Optics, some stuff from Epiphan. You don't have to worry about that you have to have four different vendors who you're dealing with. You deal with Broadfield. Glenn helps you out with it. Your dealer's there to help you out with it. Glenn's not the only guy here who knows stuff. He's just the guy who knows the most stuff. So he's there for you. And more than that is if you get into something that's a real rabbit hole that you're really stuck, Glenn's Rolodex is the best in the industry. So he's going to go to the right person inside the vendor where he thinks the problem is to troubleshoot. And I can tell you, me and Glenn have done some troubleshooting stuff trying to get this stuff work when we get it the first time. And there's no one better at figuring it out sometimes. But Glenn, the part I have to laugh about is, how often do we troubleshoot and find out it's that first easy thing that we skipped because we broke our own rule of start small and work big? So that's just a general tip for everyone. We all know that, but always look for the most obvious cause of the problem first, right? It's not always IT related.
No. Once in a while you shoot yourself and you're like, damn it, I should have looked at that first, but I thought that was too obvious. So, yeah.
Now on the side screen, we've got our dealers, your reps. One of the things I want to talk about to wrap up the show, because I've gone much too long on this, is Glenn's role this year is really our workflow specialist. So you still have, as Broadfield Distributing, your dealer rep, your sales rep is your guy. He's got Glenn to bring in for a more complex install or to reassure your customer that he's buying from the right person, what have you. So Glenn is an asset that we make available to all our dealers, and he can handle things from a little thing with a YOLO box problem up to a super big problem where a Tricaster is just, giving you all kinds of grief. And the number one thing I want to stress is he's your safety net and a great reason to buy from Broadfield, because we're giving you access to one of the smartest guys in the industry when it comes to these live streaming workflows. So Glenn, thank you for being on the show. We went way too long, but I think we did a great job. And I hit my whole bourbon, and I'm not having another one because it's snow and ice out there and I got to get home safely. But this is a great liquid lunch. Jim will be back on next week. I have no idea what the topic is, but I'm sure it'll be interesting and hopeful for the dealers. And we hope you, Mr. Dealer, wherever you're located in the country, stay safe, stay warm, and most of all, keep selling live streaming. And to stress again, anyone you sold a live streaming product to last year, You need to be calling and revisiting, ask them how they're doing with it, what they like about it, what they don't. Listen to what they tell you about what's going on, listen to their problems, and then come up with solutions where they can take their streaming to the next level. And that's especially true in houses of worship, because in 2020, they showed their congregants we can do this. Now in 2021, they have to start showing they can do it really great and better than the other guys out there. So this is Gary from Broadfield Distributing. Jim will be back next week. Glenn, any last words?
No, hey, let us know what you think about this new format. We've got a couple of these lined up for other things, but no, really, ping me, hit me up. I am here to help you navigate all of these different options we talked about.
Cool. Broadfield Distributing. Our goal is to make it easy for you to do business. We hope this show helps you, gives you some ideas on some things you can sell and some ways to reach out to your customers. It's Gary and Glenn. Guys, have a good one. Stay safe, stay warm.
Broadfield Distributing is a value-added distributor of live production, streaming, video editing, and storage products. We only sell to resellers. We are always looking for new dealers. So call us at 1-800-634-5178 or email sales@broadfield.com. You'll like doing business with Broadfield because we make it easy to do business.